Hello.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is the Curious Anarchy podcast, and I'm here today with another episode for the Astrology series. Today we have Aries and Sandra Murphy. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hi, Sandra. How are you? Yep, I can hear you.
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, very well.
Good. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of a brief, you are the first up Aries. The idea behind this series is to illustrate how astrology can be broken down in a way that's simple and easy to understand. It's been done through story because story is pretty much the most effective way to learn anything. Everybody's access astrology and access what it means. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a story from each of the 12 signs in the zodiac, something powerful, something profound, something maybe sad or even funny, and then I'll be speaking to a number of astrologers who will extract the astrological information out of the story. So they'll be talking about the houses and the planets and the aspect and all of that. And creating that, reinterpreting, translating that into astrology. So, first up, if you can just tell us, what you're up to in life, briefly, because I know you're up to a lot.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I wear several hats, and that's probably one of the best traits of an Aries. We do so much, and I do quite a lot. I'm on the of an equine nutrition company. I developed it, the product that stands behind it, and the concept of it has just gained the European patent, so it's the first in the world. So being the sort of person I am, it meant that I was very focused, and I just got on with doing the thing that I wanted to achieve. It was just an amazing time in my life. I don't know whether you want me to go back and tell you the story behind it and how I developed it.
Briefly, if you can.
Yeah. So basically, I've been in horses for 50 years, and they're just an absolute passion of mine. And one of the biggest problems with horses is they don't drink enough. Because they are prey animals, so they tend not to drink when they're in a stress situation where you use horses nowadays are stressful for them, so they tend not to drink. And there's been an age-old issue where you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. So with the modern horse, when we do all the sports and working and that sort of thing, we have bad issues that arise like dehydration, etc., and colic. So, it's a major thing for horses. It's the biggest killer of horses in the world, dehydration. And so I developed the world's first liquid feed. So horses can now drink their food, which means that we can now get fluid into horses by their feed. And so it's the first in the world. But I had to sacrifice an awful lot to get to where I am now. And that includes a lot of emotional sacrifice as well, and a lot of physical sacrifice, financial sacrifice. It does mean that you have to be that sort of resilient person to be able to sacrifice that amount for your passion and for your what you are here to do. What you've been destined to do, and that's the thing. You have to realize what your destiny is and what you're here on this earth to do. And I think everybody has that, but it's whether they realize it or whether they are in that frame of mind to follow their dreams, or just go with the flow. And I'm not one of those that go with the flow.
Brilliant. I think there's some real Aries energy coming through. Observation, and you've got, wow, there's a lot. There's yeah, really seated in your power, in your strength. I love that. Okay, so we've had a little bit about that and a little bit about yourself. We have 25 minutes, no pressure. Would you like to tell us your story?
Well, that's part of the story. That's a big part of like where I am now today. But yeah, growing up, I mean, it was pretty tough for me growing up because I was the oldest girl of 4 siblings, 2 older brothers, and mum being a single parent, she had to go obviously work for the money to look after us all. So I was left to look after the family at a very early age, at about 12. So I've always been sort of like a carer type person, very empathetic. And so, you know, that was sort of my role for a very long time. And I see my sort of, you know, my strength from my pony, because my dad bought me a pony when I was very young, about 8 years old. So my pony was the place where I went for my, you know, to find myself as such, you know, and so looking after the family, you know, it had its own sort of challenges because, like for instance, my younger sister, you know, has a resentment towards me now because, you know, I was one who was bossing her around when my mum wasn't there. I was telling her to get, you know, tidy up a room and, you know, wash the dishes and, you know, that sort of, you know, and I got a lot of backlash from my siblings because I had to keep the house in order as such because my mum wasn't able to. And so that has a huge knock-on effect in my adult life, and the relationship that I have with my sister. And sort of, and also, you know, being a single parent with my mum, my brothers were very much, one of my brothers was very much withdrawn, and, you know, because of the family dynamic. And so it was very tough sort of growing up, and I sort of tried to handle it the best way I could. And like I said, my horses were my escape, and they really were my escape. I mean, I got to a point at one point where, you know, I had sort of these horrendous suicidal thoughts because I was getting abused as well, unbeknown to my family. And so I sort of spent a lot of time with my pony, the time I could with her, and she helped me to get through a really bad part of my youth. I didn't realise, I mean, knowing now what I know then, you know, it was not the right way to think because, you know, I've had amazing things happen to me since those dark thoughts as such, you know, way back when I was young. But, you know, I'm very, very, you know, very resilient, and I just said, no, let's get on with this. You know, we've got loads to do. There's lots of things out there for me to explore. So anyway, moving on, you know, we moved up to Lincolnshire, and I managed from London, and I managed to sort of set up sort of a little bit of an equine infrastructure for myself because we had some land. But even moving to Lincolnshire, there were some major challenges there because being a black female, or just being a black family, just a black family moving to the sort of depths of rural Lincolnshire was really quite harrowing because there was, you know, the racism was absolutely horrendous. I mean, I remember one day walking down the street and this chap, this young guy, started slating me across the road, calling me all the N-words under the sun. So he was actually eating some chips and beans at the time, and I just remember walking across the road nice and calmly and said to him, you know, say that again. And he said it in my face, and I just got his chips and beans and just shoved it straight in his face and just walked away. You know, these are sort of blatant, overt sort of racism that I had to endure when I was younger. I mean, this is back in the 70s. And so, sorry, 70s or 80s. It was sort of late 70s, early 80s. And so, you know, just growing up in that sort of institutional, not institutional, sort of systemic racism, you know, because of the county was very, very, you know, very white and very sort of farmers and that sort of thing. And it was hard. It was hard to deal with that. Luckily, I didn't actually go to school when I came up here because I'd left school. So I didn't have to endure all the, the kids, that would have really sort of had a field day, with me. Or tried to anyway. They wouldn't have got away with it. So
I can't imagine they would have.
No, they wouldn't have done. So it's lucky for them. I didn't go to school. So anyway, I was sort of in the sort of market raising area, and there wasn't a huge amount to do. I started a business when I was 18, and I was a painter and decorator, and I earned a lot of money, but also spent a lot of money, and I decided that wasn't the way forward. So at that time, so what I did with the money I made, I invested in a property, and I then joined the Royal Air Force. So, because there wasn't a great deal to do in the town, and I thought, well, I'm not staying here. I've got far much more to see, to do, than to just be sat in this little backwater sort of town in the middle of Lincolnshire. So I walked into the recruitment office in Lincoln, and I, said, what do I need to do to join up? And they said, well, you need to lose 2 stone, basically, because I was a little bit overweight at the time. And well, they didn't actually say you have to lose 2 stone, but that's in essence what I had to do. And so I just embarked on this fitness training regime, running around the town with black plastic bags on, and sweating and doing all that sort of stuff, and eating lettuce leaves and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I lost the weight, ended up going into the RAF and graduating through the RAF as an MT driver. So my first posting was over at RF Cranwell, which is just in Lincolnshire, so it wasn't far from home and my horse and everything. And I ended up taking my horse to Cranwell, and I was one of the first black riders in the RAF to compete for the Royal Air Force. So it was exciting in that respect, but I got a lot of grief as well. A lot of institutional racism came out of that because we were in a military setting. But I didn't really care about that. As I said, I've got wide shoulders. I could take it, and I wasn't a young sort of RAF person. I was like 21 when I joined up, so I was sort of quite mature for my like as an LAC, as a first ranker sort of thing. So anyway, so my horses came through the RAF with me as a driver, as an MT driver. Everything I do is very competitive. It's just one of those things, and I was an MT driver, lorry driver. And not only was I just a lorry driver, I happened to then win the UK Lady Lorry Driver of the Year for 4 years running. So,
well done.
Yeah. So, if I'm doing something, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it bloody well. Do you know what I mean? I'm just not going to mess about at it. I'm just going to hit it and do it hard and do it well. And that's me down to T. If I put my hand to something, I go all the way, and it has to be done properly. I don't sort of do half measures, and if that means focusing to the point where I'm sort of distracted, that's what I do. I focus, and it is a bad trait sometimes because some people that need my attention don't get my attention when which is a shame. But if you have to be good and to be successful at something, you do need to be focused, and that's one thing that has always stayed with me. So after leaving the RAF, I decided that I would develop a product, and I did. It was called the Swim Like Aquamum, and I took it on to Dragon's Den. 36,000 applicants, and we was narrowed down to 8 people for the series. 36. Wow. We had to jump through several very high, very narrow, very small hoops, to get through to the 8. And I got through to the 8, and I was actually the longest in the den, and I still hold the record for the longest person in the den.
Wow.
2.5 hours I was in there, which was fab. It was a really fantastic experience. And the whole experience, really, I mean, I didn't get the money, and it wasn't, as far as I was concerned, it wasn't a failure, because failures are there for a reason. Failures are there to wheedle out the people that are not strong enough to keep going. You have to keep going. You have to look at failure. You have to face failure, because it is something you have to face. And then you have to say, how can I do better? And how can I, overcome this? Rather than going inside yourself and saying, well, that's it, I'm not doing it again. So that's what I did. I just thought, right, what is the way forward from this? And what I found was I wasn't educated in the field that I was going into. And so the main thing I had to do then was get educated in that field that I wanted to move forward in. So I wanted to do something with the equine because that's what I knew. I had years and years and years of experience. And so what I did was I had to embark on an education program. So when Dragon's Den didn't work out, I lost my home. I drop kicked my husband because he was very, very detrimental to my future, as in he was very suppressive, and he didn't let my creativity come out. So, he was, I got divorced. I lost my home, and I ended up sleeping on my mum's sofa in a 2-bedroom bungalow. With my 2 children, and it was really rock bottom for me, even more so than I think now, even more so than when I was younger, and I had those sort of dark thoughts and stuff, because I had now reasons to think, oh God, what am I doing, what's happening. So I actually then decided at that point, after a bonfire night with my children, just once I've done all the toffee apples and the candy floss stuff, and put the kids to bed, I ended up tossing all these products, onto the fire because I just couldn't carry them around with me any longer. I had to make a break from that old product. And so I did, that's what I did. And I spent about a week or 2 on the sofa sobbing, just feeling ridiculously sorry for myself and, just saying, you're useless and giving myself a real, kicking. That's what I did. I gave myself a kicking, but that in giving myself a kicking, I then realised, come on, Sandra, you need to do something now because you've got 2 kids to look after and you've got yourself to bring back up again. You're on your own, you've got to do it. So I said, right, 5-year education plan to educate myself so I'm an expert in my field. I didn't even have a GCSE. I didn't even have a GCSE. So I literally had to go back to college with all the kids. And I did 4 GCSEs and I got 4 A stars. I should hope so too. And then I went on to college again. I went on to further education and I did an access course, which is equivalent to about 4 or 5 A levels, I think. And I got distinctions all the way through. And then I went into uni and I studied for BSc in equine sports science. And I came out with that 2-1 after 3 years of study. And so I got myself into a position where not only did I have years of experience with horses, now I've got an academic qualification with horses as well, which is what then backed me up. Yeah, because what you do need in this world is something to back yourself up with. Now, obviously, being black, it was very, very difficult because, even if you've got all this, you still have to work 20 times harder than anybody else to show and to prove that you're good and good enough. So I developed a product, and that's what I did based on my knowledge and my experience, and also based on the fact that I'm very spiritual, and I do a lot of meditation. And in my meditations, I have sort of, not voices, because that sounds a bit weird, but I get, in my dreams, I get messages, if that's what you could call it. I always have a pad by my bed and a pen. And, in the night, I can actually, not even known to me, wake up and write paragraphs of stuff and then go back to sleep. And then in the morning I wake up proper and I look at it and think, oh my gosh, and you're going to laugh at this, but this is really interesting. Wow. I went into a meditation, and the meditation I went into was a boardroom meeting. And I went into this boardroom, and don't laugh, but it's true, because this is what the meditation was all about. And in that meditation, in that boardroom meeting, there was Einstein, don't laugh, Michael Jackson and his little monkey, okay? There was also Richard Branson, he was there, and we were all around this table. There's a couple of others, and we were all around this table, and they were firing stuff at me, and I was answering these questions, and just sort of answered like a bit of backwards and forwards. And then Einstein stood up and he drew this thing on the whiteboard. And I was like, okay, yeah. And he explained to me about this homeostatic line and all the peaks and troughs, etc., etc. And I said, oh, that's great. And I said, I'll use that, you know. And I did. I come out of my meditation and I went to my PowerPoint presentation and I put this as a slide. And it was one of the most important slides of my what I do to explain, you know, my presentation.
Wow.
Because it does literally explain what my product does and how it works in just one slide almost. And I know it sounds really ridiculous, but I just that's what I do. That's what I do. I go into that realm and I ask questions and I wait for the answers to come to me. And I always remember Michael Jackson just stroking the head of his monkey and just being happy that I'm working with the animals. And that's it. You know, so that was for me, it was confirmation of what I'm here to do. Yeah. Because I'm having the messages come from somewhere, you know, the ether, just somewhere. And so, you know, I know that I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing, and that is why I'm passionate about doing what I'm doing, because I have the help of the universe, you know, behind me. And I know some people could think I'm a bit airy fairy, but I really don't care what people think. You know, if it helps me to move on and to produce what I do for the horses of this world, then that's what I'm going to do. And so far, it's not let me down. So really, that's where I am at the moment. And it's so exciting to now open up 7 years later, having had, you know, thousands and thousands of clients across the UK, across Europe. We're going into America. We've got Dubai, South, you know, and Singapore, Malaysia. All these countries are now starting to open up. All these, you know, opportunities are now starting to open up. You know, because I haven't let go. I've had so much pushback in the industry. Being a black female in a white middle class industry is so hard. But I will not let them walk all over me, because this is bigger than me. Can you see what I mean? And I am taking this forward because it's a bigger thing than me. Because these horses of the world need help. They need looking after. Yeah, they haven't got a voice. They can't say, don't feed me that. You know, I don't want that. You know what I mean? They just do, and they have to eat what they're given. And, you know, it's having serious detrimental effects on these animals. So if I can do what I can do to help them, that's what I will do, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you so much, Sandra. But every time we speak, I hear your story, and I hear something else in your story, and then it's like, oh wow, there's like so many fragments to this.
Yeah.
There's such a fierce determination, though.
Thank you.
Really fierce, composed but really fierce. It's like a caged animal. No, not like a caged animal, like an animal, like a really wild bear that has restraint. Do you know what I mean? Like it knows when it can really bring out the beast, and it knows when to do that. It's brilliant. Every time I speak to you, I just feel like, wow, let me go and take on the world. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good.
Yeah. So is there anything that you'd like to leave our listeners with before we go?
I think just basically, there will be people out there that will try to hold you back. There'll be people out there that will be jealous. Even people that are very, very close to you, that you feel that should support you and love you and care for you, they have their own insecurities. And, you know, even if they're very close to you, they may not be the people that you need to be with. And so you need to recognize if there's any toxic energy around you. And no matter how hard it is, you have to be, if that's what you want, you have to be prepared to let that toxic energy go. And it is very, very hard. It goes against what people say and people do. But, you know, it is very lonely at the top. And you've got to understand that if you want to be where you want to be. And I don't mean just money. This is not to do with money. This is to do with, you know, success in a form of, you know, realizing your worthy ideal, you know, and it has to be something that you are passionate about, and you have to keep going. You will never win a race if you stop halfway, and that's the truth. You've got to keep going. So if I can leave that with people, to say to them, you know, it depends what you want in your life, and if you're happy in your life doing what you do day to day, then that's fine. That's also good. But if you want to achieve great things, you have got to be prepared to sacrifice things in your life.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sandra. Much appreciated. I think this is the third time now.
The third?
Yeah. And we've got another one to go. So, I'll be in touch about that one.
I'm going to have to start charging you millions of pounds for my hours. Yeah, that's it. You've put me on a roll now. Yeah, you better get your checkbook out, Jermaine.
I'll speak to my accountant about
yes,
that.
Please.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Sandra. Thank you again. This is the astrology series, beginning with Sandra Murphy, the Aries. Thank you all so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.